morning show here on Arise News. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has wrapped up his engagement at the 80th United Nations General Assembly with bold interventions on global peace and governance. Addressing the press, he revealed that South Africa has offered itself as a venue for possible negotiations to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And on the thorny issue of the UN Security Council reform, he told Arise correspondent Adesuwa Giwa-Osagie that no country should hold veto powers.
I do agree that no country should have a veto power. The veto power that those 5 countries have has debilitated the UN from being able to be effective. Because when everyone else agrees, including the General Assembly, one country can just veto everything. So we're back to where we started, even with very reasonable steps that need to be taken to resolve the problems of the world. We believe that consensus needs to be built. And there are ways of building consensus, and there are ways of persuading one another and seeing how best the solutions can be solved. We were able as a country to reach consensus to solve one of the most difficult problems that the world has ever faced, racial discrimination and apartheid. And we did it by building consensus.
Well, Arise correspondent Adesuwa Giwa-Osagie joins us now from New York for an update on developments at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Good morning, Adesuwa. How are you?
Morning, Kachi. I'm all right. A bit tired, but good to go.
Well done, well done. Well, can you give us some insight into what happened this week at UNGA 80? Any standouts to you from world leaders?
Yes, thank you for asking. Now, UNGA 80 High-Level Week has actually come to an end as of yesterday. It was a celebration of 80 years of the signing of the UN Charter, and world leaders were focused on that. A lot of world leaders were focused on that, but also on the realities of the current situation. Now, my standout will always be the African leaders. One, Cyril Ramaphosa, of course, of South Africa, who I was able to speak with, who, as the president of South Africa, took what they called a moral stance when they took a case against Israel to the ICJ, calling it genocide. And it seemed that he felt sort of vindicated by the fact that both the UN Commission has now found that, and that 142 member states have voted to recognize a two-state solution in the New York resolution, and also that more countries are recognizing Palestine as its own state. Of course, our own Vice President, Kashim Shettima, gave a very compelling speech on the floor of the UN headquarters, talking about the price for peace is eternal vigilance, talking about Nigeria's historic role in fighting not just for ourselves, but for the sanctity and safety of other nations, with Nigerians serving on 51 of 60 of the UN peacekeeping missions. And Colombia's president, whose visa has now been revoked because of statements that he made outside the UN headquarters at a pro-Palestinian march. But he did stand at UN headquarters to appeal about the plight of the Palestinian people and appeal to the people of the world to see it as a common cause for humanity.
All right, Adesuwa, tell us a bit about the Nigerian delegation in New York, even though, yes, everybody's leaving now, and a couple of side events that they had. I would have loved to ask you about the president's speech, saying that Africa included is what he understands, or he would like to understand AI to be. Did that resonate among Nigerians,
Yes.
in New York? What were the side events that you witnessed? Tell us about them.
You know, very interestingly, because you have brought up AI and Africa included, there is this idea that the digital divide must be bridged between the global south and the global north, but particularly in Africa. That is a message that resonates not just in Nigeria. I was speaking to the Minister of Communication and Innovation from Sierra Leone yesterday, and that's something that she brought up, bridging the gap of this digital divide, and that Africa must be included. And this idea of Africa must be included also goes beyond technology, of course, because multiple African countries are campaigning for a permanent seat for the an African nation on the UN Security Council. But more to what you asked, Nigeria's side events. Kaduna State had a side event in the Nigeria House, and we saw them signing an MOU on minerals, I believe it was. Niger State also had a side event in Nigeria House and also signed MOUs, both with private companies, in terms of improving the human development index there. Speaking about AI and tech specifically, actually, the Honorable Minister Bosun Tijani had an event to celebrate the 3MTT program and 2 years of implementing that program. And if you remember, he was on the cover of Time when they did their AI Time 100 most influential people there. So those are some of the events we saw. And I must also mention the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Honorable Jumoke Oduole, who had an event that was trying to help Nigerians get investment from people who attended the event and from, big investors in New York.
Adesuwa, I did see that. Would that be the event that featured Tiffany Amber and the fashion show?
Yes. I really love that you brought that up, Kachi. You have a good eye for that. Nigeria's soft power and our creative economy. Sometimes people like to talk about our fintech, and that's good and that's all well and fine, but you are absolutely right there. It featured fashion, it features entrepreneurs, and what these things do is that it also increases Nigeria's soft power on the global stage. When our influence spreads through our fashion, our clothes, and our music, it also helps our policies, or our diplomacy rather, on the international stage.
Adesuwa, sorry about that, Steve.
Go on.
I like the fact that, we saw this under the Ministry for Trade and Investment, whereas normally we would only find this under the Ministry of Culture, Arts and the Creative Economy. But it's just beautiful to see how at the end of the day, no matter what industry, the creativity is truly embedded in every single one, and truly the investment and support can come from any source.
Yes, you're absolutely right there. Absolutely right.
Okay.
All right, Adesuwa, let's step away from creativity a bit and go to the Middle East. The Israeli-Palestine tussle remain a hot button. I'm sorry that your own, underlines, how hot it is. But it remained a hot button topic, at the United Nations, the Atonga. Were you surprised when people walked out of Netanyahu's speech?
Yes.
Were you surprised?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Before he actually spoke, there were videos online that had to be debunked because they were showing videos of last Onga when people walked out of his speech. So I was not surprised at all that people walked out of his speech. And, it was intentional. I want people to understand that people intentionally came in to walk out because he was the first speaker at 9 a.m. on Friday. So that's an intentional thing. That means people came into the hall to allow them to be able to show protest and show that they are not aligned. He spoke to a very empty hall. For a first build speaker, that hall was very empty. And not only did people walk out, but also I believe the Iranian delegation put a picture collage of Iranian citizens that were killed during the 12-day war when, bombs were dropped on Iran by the Netanyahu regime there in Israel. So I was not surprised by that, particularly because of the energy that we have been seeing. It has been a very hot topic issue here. Some people are saying that what's going on in other countries, but I asked one protester who was out here protesting for Sudan, and I said, do you believe that there's too much eyes on Gaza instead of Sudan? And he said to me, no, that all our causes are joined, that, there's no such thing as too much focus on one crisis, that no human being should suffer, which I found very interesting because sometimes we say that eyes are not on what's going on in Sudan or DRC, that everyone is focused on Palestine. But the protesters here, which there were a lot of protesters, all seem to be aligned in well, the ones who are pro-Palestinian rather, they seem to be aligned in that their problems are shared. There was also counter-protesters, but very few, waving American flags or Israeli flags. We also had, of course, as I said, the Colombian president who went out to meet the protesters and made comments that have now resulted in his visa being revoked.
Wow, that's just insane. But, you know, Adesuwa, I know that this didn't deter Netanyahu, interestingly, because he did say he will finish the job. And there were loudspeakers that were being broadcast to reach hostages and civilians in Gaza. So it's almost as if, you know, he expects this. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to say what I need to say anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Adesuwa, that's all on the week that was. Thank you so much. Please, you were saying?
Oh, no, I was going to just add that not only were they loudspeakers, but that his message was also broadcast to all the phones in Gaza.
Wow.
That is very interesting technology there. But you're right, he's not deterred.
He is not. Adesuwa, thank you so much for your time and do enjoy your stay in New York.